You may want to come for a minute if you want to. Good afternoon. My name is Doug Holder. We're here on Poet to Poet, Writer to Writer, and my guest today is Pui Ying Wong. How are you, Pui?
Pui.
Pui, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Pui Ying Wong. And I just wanted to say today, the new edition of Ibbotson Street came out, Ibbotson 36. It will be available at Porter Square Books, Gargoyle Bookstore, and the Harvard Bookstore. So we have Marge Percy and Jean Valentine and a lot of other great folks in here. So that's Ibbotson 36. So I hope you'll purchase a copy. It can be purchased online as well. Anyway, I'll go into my introduction on Pui Ying Wong. You were born in Hong Kong. She's the author of full-length books of poetry, Yellow Plum Season, 2 chapbooks, Mementos, and Sonnet for a New Country. And her poems have appeared or are forthcoming in Prairie Schooner, the Southampton Review, New York Quarterly, Valparaiso Poetry Review, Shah, an Asian Literary Journal. Skipping over, she has a lot. An Online Artifact, Constellations. She hasn't been in Ibbotson Street, but she will. 5 a.m., Decomp, Red River Review, Literary Bohemian, and many others. Recently, you went Up the Staircase. I was in that magazine a long time ago. Her work has been nominated for Pushcart Prize, Best of the Web, and she was a finalist for the 2011 Sundress Best of the Net editions. She is also a book reviewer for Somerville's Savannah Barber Press. And after living in Brooklyn for many years, she moved to Cambridge, Mass. With her husband, the poet Tim Suermondt, who is here right in the studio. May have a word or two to say, we never know. So you moved from Brooklyn to Boston, and some might say Boston is a lot more provincial than Brooklyn is. Why would you make this move?
We made this move because we really like to have a change, having lived in New York for many years. And Boston is a smaller version of New York, but I find that, it's definitely a very vibrant community, and especially the writer community here in Cambridge and Somerville. So I think there's really no lack of things to do or to participate in.
But what was the impetus really for you to move from Brooklyn to Boston?
Well, I think for us, we want to remain in Northeast, and we realize that we are both urban people. We like to be in city, and so thinking about the different city in the East Coast, in this area, we think really Boston come up. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we both work at home, so we're not tied into going to a workplace. So we have a little bit of flexibility where we'll be.
Okay. And so you find that Boston is a welcoming home for poets.
I find it very much so.
And what communities? I know you're in the Bagel Bar community. Do you participate in other communities of poets or?
Sometimes we will go to other venue reading, for example, the one in Jamaica Plain in Boston, and then also Cambridge Library holds lots of good reading that we goes to, and of course, Gargoyle, Savannah Barber Press has very active poetry scene, so there's always something going on.
Now, in fact, you have a chapbook recently published by the Savannah Barber Press. What was the name of that again?
Oh, actually, it wasn't me.
Oh.
It was Tim. Yeah.
Tim, you did. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe you will have one.
Maybe.
Okay. Now, if you had to define, you're from Hong Kong, China originally, or Hong Kong?
Hong Kong.
Okay, which is now, in essence, becoming part of China, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you had to define the sensibility of, let's say, Chinese poet, or from the Eastern influence to the Western, I mean, what would that be? Is there a different sensibility? I mean, that's a big question, but I mean, is a different approach to poetry? What would you say?
I think there is. For me, just because I was born and raised there, so I had to learn. I learned Chinese, and which is my native language. And I think that the Chinese language is really very different from English. As you know, Chinese language is made up of character, and each character has to me, it's really evolved from pictures. So the visual component of each character is strong. So when I look at a Chinese character, besides the sound and the meaning, it also gives me a visual impact that English language would not have. Yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of writing, that makes a bit of difference, you know.
Well, you know the old cliche, lost in translation. So if someone's translating from the Chinese to English, is it often a lot lost? Is it very difficult to do?
I think that it is. Translation basically is very difficult, but a lot of poet translator are doing it in spite of it being difficult, because that's really the only way to read another poetry.
But I mean, with your
language.
experience with translations from Chinese to English, have they been sort of...
It is difficult. But
I know it is difficult, but I mean, is there a lot lost between
I would say some of it is lost, you know, but I cannot say a lot is lost, but some of it definitely is lost.
It's just unavoidable, right?
It's unavoidable.
Yeah. Now, you review books for the Savannah Barber Press, right?
I just started to.
You just started to. But have you reviewed books before?
No, just except with friends. You know, sometimes we do some kind of informal review, but not like with the press.
How would you think you would approach, reviewing a book that, you were given a book and, well, first of all, what do you look for in a poem or in a collection of poems? What are some of the qualities that you look for that you would, put your your critical input towards?
Well, I think first of all, I think I would try to be open-minded as I can, because I write in a certain way, and not everyone write like that. I think as a reviewer.
Well, how do you write?
How do I write?
I mean, you write in a certain way, and you're saying that it differs from other folks in what way?
Well, I guess my poetry, they are not totally narrative. Maybe it's a different some narrative element, but it's not, strictly telling a story, and so this is just one example. So if I look at a poem that is narrative in nature, I think that I need to be open-minded about it. When I look at poetry or books of poems, usually the poems that I gravitate to has emotional power for me, and of course the use of language. The language, it can be very stimulating or just interesting. So kind of open up something new for me.
How about thematic? Do you look for a sort of coherence, a thematic coherence, let's say, in a collection?
Not so much.
Yeah.
Not so much. And maybe it's a personal bias, because I do not write that way. When I write, my commitment is to the poem in front of me. But
if you're writing a collection, when you put a collection together,
because I think that for me, a lot of the poems that I write, I think there is a kind of thread, or they are coherent in a way that is not deliberate. So when I put together a book, it's not so much on the theme, but maybe emotional quality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's that's interesting. In the poem "Footsteps" on the viaduct, You seem to embrace the yin and yang of existence, how absence is presence, silence is born of sound. Do you have to remind yourself of this fact all the time, this yin and yang of existence? Or does poetry help you keep your center?
I think because each poem is different, it just happened that when I wrote that particular poem, that kinds of come up, and in a way that, you know, that it feels true to that poem, so I go with it. But I don't know if I always keep the yin and yang in as a whole. I just never know what I'm getting into when I write a poem. So
so you don't start out with an idea for a poem, or what do
no,
you what happens? I mean, how does a poem come about? How is a poem born?
it comes about in a different way. Sometimes it's a line, sometimes it's an image, or sometimes it's a few words, and sometimes it can be a story, or some element in a story. So they just come to me differently, and when I write, I'm trying to figure out what they're telling me, what the images are telling me. So for me, it's really trying to find out what are the impulse in a poem.
I've noticed in the poems that you've sent me, there's a great nature imagery. That's not my forte, and I'm more of a character study. I mean, do you consider yourself primarily a nature poet, or you don't categorize yourself at all?
No, I can't really categorize myself as a nature poet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you any school of poetry that's influenced you, or anything of that nature?
No, I am not really tied into any kind of school, or think that, no, just really very open, very, very wide.
Okay. And how about workshops and things? Have there been any, workshops or people you've worked with who have influenced you over the years and for your own poetry?
I have taken, fair number of workshops, and I have some really good teacher that teach craft. And
anyone we know?
You mean in this community?
And
Well, for example, Cleopatra Matthews, she's an excellent teacher. I took her in Vermont, one of the summer conference, and Carol Frost would be another one. They are all very strong about the basic, about craft.
Okay. And you're in a poetic couple, which actually in the studio is Tim Suermondt, who's been on this show before also. Is there any competition between you two? Tim, you want to say something? Do you find the relationship competitive at all?
Well, I don't know about competition per se, but the fact that we're both poets, I think it does push both of us a little. So if we could get the other to say, "No, I like that. Yeah, that's not bad. That's okay," that sort of makes your day.
So you concur?
I do, yeah. It's really more supportive than a competitive relationship. I mean, in terms of writing.
Do you critique each other's work?
We do.
Yeah. And then you find it helpful, or?
I think that we trust each other enough that we are each other's first reader. Like if I finish a poem, I would go to Tim, and he would do the same, and we would look at it, and then we would, go over it, give our reaction to the poem.
Okay. So you got some time to read from your work, a lot of time. Our interview, I think we went through our questions pretty quick, so you can just read away. Are you going to be reading in any series coming up soon, or
Not
anything?
at the moment, yeah.
Not at the moment?
Not at the moment.
Okay. All right, well, why don't you read from your work?
Okay.
Yeah, Read from your work.
Oh, why don't I start with some newer poems?
Okay.
These are the poems in my new collection. Hopefully it will be a next book.
What's the name of the collection?
An Emigrant's Winter.
Have you sent it around?
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully there will be some, we'll find a home for the book soon.
I don't know if any publishers are listening out there in TV land. Yeah.
Okay, so here are some poems, and this is actually the title poem.
Okay.
An Emigrant's Winter. That winter, water froze in the pipes and the faucet wheezed like asthma. Icicles teeth along the power line. I open my mouth and my speech stutter. The entire city lived in a snow globe. Even big men trod timidly in the wind, hiding the faces like shamed felons caught by the TV camera. The market sold out everything. A young boy snatched the last pack of meat. Sleet fell all night, tapping on the windows the way the dead might. In my dream, I went back to the house that had forgotten about me. Not one dare ask how I've been. But I sat with them just the same, watching TV like I had never left. Who will remember what? Who can say? Mornings punctured by sounds of dragging snowplows, I peeped at the sun, the feeble white disk failed again to burn off the clouds. It was so cold, I could think of fire and only fire. At night when the air stirs. The war is in the distance, but coffins arrive at night by plane as we sleep in our house, and the pipes are the only things that whip. When Salvador Chan was awarded the Medal of Honor, he spoke of his dead bodies and the night when the sky had more bullets than stars. I had marched against the wall and heard my own voice soar and deep and sleep like a fish back to the sea. In a city called home, the dictator's bomb dropped on his people, and a survivor lashes out at the TV cameras, asking, "Why do you watch us die?" In the quiet of my house, I look out and see neither bullets nor stars. I watch and watch, my tongue tied.
Where was this? What was inspired this poem?
This poem was, I wrote this a couple years ago, inspired by the war in Iraq. At the time, I think the troop was still there before they come home.
Okay. Did some sort of news account, sort of a specific news account or story or something spark the poem? Or?
I think it might have been inspired by actually by the soldier. In this case, is Salvador Chan. The news of that is that he received the Medal of Honor in the White House, and he talked about the battleground at night.
Okay.
When the volcano erupts. Some say they see it coming. Some ask why nobody warns us, but we grab our children, their stuffed toys, and run. On the hill, a lens of trees burn, unstoppable, like someone who bear an unbearable grievance has set himself on fire. And we hardly recognize the mountain that once gave us soil so rich, a vista so awe-inspiring that we burst into praise song, but now grunts like a pedophile priest. Ashes rain on our faces as we run past the school, the town hall, the churchyard empty. Some say we must run on our own feet out of this. couple years ago went to Vietnam, and my sister worked in Vietnam, and then she took us to, Tim and I, to Mekong River, and my first visit there.
What does your sister do there?
She worked for a company.
Oh, okay.
She's like taking care of. They build factories in Vietnam, so that's where she is. Seeing Mekong River inspired this poem. Yeah. Mekong, smelled of burnt leaves, a bird shoots up into the gasoline air. Boats carry pomelo, basil, denim, buzzing of work. Hemlock sway, a baby asleep to the blue of the day, two dogs chin down. How does the river heal? Crowns of water hyacinth gather in the river's wide mouth.
I love that sort of grocery list of images that just sort of add up to a really vivid picture. To be a poet is to be a close observer, right?
I think it would definitely help.
Right. And so, do you carry, I know I carry a little book around with me, always jotting notes down. Is that sort of a method of yours as well?
I do, yeah, I do. Sometimes, you do see things and you tend to forget. And then to write it down, maybe it will turn into something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do like to write about places, and so the following poem is again is inspired by a place that I visit in Hong Kong, which is really my native city. And when I was smaller, the name of this place is called Lin Nan Garden. It's like a Buddhist
You
campus.
say you like to write about places, I mean, I'm very provincial in my writing. I write about the local area, and basically, because I don't travel much. Do you find any inspiration right here in the city, in the local area?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Okay. So one doesn't have to travel to exotic
No,
locales.
no. I like just walking down the street, and then and to make observation, and sometimes it will come into your poem. Although one not necessarily locate the place in the poem, but it's inspired by the surrounding.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But the reason why I mentioned this is like a Buddhist temple, but it received a lot of visitor. It's like one of the hotspot for. I mean, they got a lot of visiting. It's called Landing Garden. Year's end, musicians perform in the open, and the flutist notes exiled us momentarily to the land of the dispossessed. Still green leaves stir in the breeze, an elder fusses with his high-tech camera. Foreign maids on holiday pose, spreading their arms like swans. The gazebo of perfection reflects on the pond, goldenrod in the shadows fall. Lotus bursts out too, can a little mud diminish it? On the height sits Sanman, the mountain gate, where the air is chilly but peace awaits, if only our hearts were purer. But longing, numinous of peace, keeps us at the threshold. Longing, can we starve it like a beast till it is no more? The trouble is, there is no duress in Buddhist poetry, only sounds of the fall winds, snowbirds, silence of the unclasped hands. I join the visitors and start snapping pictures. A few years ago, there was a tornado going through Brooklyn.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, and I was living in Brooklyn then, in my neighborhood, and a lot of trees fell as a result of the tornado, and it inspired this poem. The day the trees fell. Did it matter if they were mulberry or elm, ginkgo or oak? Did it matter if they started to leave or rust, stood apart or leaned together like lovers, uncapped or pruned to perfection? Did it matter if we planned them for shade as buffer in the front lawn, if we dressed them in tinsel, fixed snow, in strings of lights, awaiting gods or angels, twined tiny tubes around their limbs, fed them water in drought year? If the thoughts would have wicked hate, the musty smell of their upturned roots was the underground, the sacrilegious air. Here's another poem about Brooklyn. Sunday, Grand Army Plaza. A crown practices silence. A mother with a wailing child waves off the ice cream vendor. An elderly man holds a bouquet in the band of his arm like a newborn. After a time when every day the sky presses down, long nights when even the streets crackle with grief, we feast on apples, fresh milk, like a patient rancorous after a long illness. But on the monuments, human action dies. Spears aim only at mid-air, half-raised hooves that go nowhere. The general's roar expires on his lips, and in the folds of remembrance black sheen, nothing but blood and tears. Well, maybe I'll read from my book.
What book is that?
My book, Yellow Plum Season.
Okay, and that's from who? Who published it?
New York Quarterly.
Oh, that's a fine magazine. You have a book by New York Quarterly also, Tim, yeah. Hammond, the guy who runs it, Hammond is his name?
Raymond Hammond.
Raymond Hammond.
And Daniel Harris.
Yeah. Jared Smith used to help. Do you know Jared Smith at all? He used to be on the board. Was on the board there. Anyway, he's been on this show.
Under the expressway. Sometimes at night, from our apartment windows, we catch a cruise ship leaving the port, plowing headstrong into the dark. We hear about the celebrity balls